What if I told you that you could accomplish a full year's worth of work in just 1 month? I know, it sounds completely impossible, but we're about to break down the exact framework that makes it happen.
Okay, so let's just dive right into this. Picture this. For 3 long years, a college dropout named Drew Houston was just spinning his wheels, trying to get his startup off the ground. He was failing, over and over again. But then something clicked, and it wasn't a new idea, a bigger team, or more funding. It was a single powerful principle that let him flip 3 years of failure into a massive multi-million-dollar launch in just 28 days. And that principle? It's part of a 5-step system we're calling the Apex 30 framework. And you know, the crazy part is the core ideas aren't new. They've been used by giants like Apple, Google, and even Pixar to launch some of the most world-changing products we use every day. So let's get into it.
The entire system, the whole shebang, is built on one simple psychological truth. It's called Parkinson's Law. Basically, it just means that if you give yourself 6 months to finish a project, guess what? It's going to take you 6 months. But what if you only give yourself 3 weeks? Well, there's a really good chance you'll get it done in 3 weeks. You know how it is when you're studying for an exam. You have a whole semester, but the real work, the cramming, happens in that final frantic week. That's Parkinson's Law, right there in action.
And what's really fascinating here is the data that backs this up. A study actually found that people working under tight deadlines finish their projects 3 times faster while still keeping 87% of the quality. Just think about that for a second. A 300% boost in speed for a tiny 13% sacrifice in quality, that is a trade-off almost anyone would take. And it's this exact principle that Drew Houston, the founder of Dropbox, decided to bet his entire company on.
So, like I said, Drew had been grinding away on his file syncing idea for 3 years. He was writing code, building prototypes, talking to people, but he was totally stuck in what you might call perfection paralysis. He was so obsessed with making it flawless that he never actually shipped anything. Finally, with the money about to dry up, his co-founder just laid it on the line. Launch in 30 days or we're done. That ultimatum, that was the shock to the system he needed.
And this brings us to the very first and honestly the most critical step of the Apex 30 framework, the Elimination Audit. This is all about creating ruthless, absolute focus.
This idea was famously mastered by Steve Jobs. You see, when he came back to a failing Apple in 1997, the company was a total mess, making 350 different products. Jobs got on stage and immediately killed 70% of them. He focused the entire company on just 4 products. That ruthless elimination didn't just save Apple, it paved the way for the iMac, the iPod, and the iPhone. It really proves that sometimes elimination is what creates the breakthrough.
And this slide, this shows you exactly how Drew put that idea into practice. On the left, that's his original bloated plan. Apps for every operating system, a perfect search function, complicated sharing systems. He looked at all of it and asked himself one simple question. If I only have 30 days, what is the one thing that truly matters? And he cut everything else away until only one thing was left. A simple folder that syncs files. That's it. That was the entire focus.
So okay, let's move on to the next step. Once you've eliminated all the noise and you have that laser focus, you need to manufacture urgency. You need to create what feels like an impossible deadline.
A legendary example of this comes from Pixar with Toy Story 2. The first version of that movie, it was a total disaster. The leadership team knew it, so they scrapped the whole thing and gave the animators a nightmare deadline. Remake the entire movie, something that usually takes 4 years, in just 9 months. The team nearly killed themselves, working 14, even 18-hour days. But the result? One of the greatest sequels ever made, 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, and an Oscar. The pressure created brilliance.
Drew took that story to heart. He created his very own nightmare deadline by making a public commitment. He went out and told his investors, his team, and every potential customer he could find that Dropbox would launch on April 1st no matter what. By going public, he created this immense external pressure that made backing out totally impossible. There was no turning back.
Okay, so this all sounds great in theory, right? Cut down your goals, set a crazy deadline, but I can hear you thinking, how on earth do you actually get the work done without just completely burning out? How do you actually execute on this?
Well, that leads us directly to step 3, deep work sprints. This is the engine. This is the how that drives all the execution. And this is not some fringe startup trick, by the way. The biggest tech companies on the planet do this. When Google faces a huge threat to a product like search, they call a code red. They literally lock teams away in a room with no meetings, no outside distractions until the problem is solved. Facebook does something similar with their war rooms, where for 30 or 45 days, teams just live and breathe a single project to make sure a big launch is successful.
And here's the crucial point. Drew used this exact strategy. He completely isolated himself. He turned off every single notification and worked in intense, focused 90-minute blocks with short breaks in between. No meetings, no checking email, no social media before 5 p.m. And by getting just 6 hours of true, deep work in a day, he crammed in 120 hours of focused effort in 20 days. Research suggests that's equivalent to about 3 months of work in a normal, distraction-filled office.
But even with all that intense focus, perfection is just not going to happen. And that's where step 4 comes in. You have to adopt the MVP, or minimum viable product, mentality.
The guiding principle here is that famous, almost cliché Silicon Valley mantra, done is better than perfect. Look, the goal isn't to launch something flawless. The goal is to launch something that works well enough to prove your concept, and most importantly, to start getting feedback from real people. So it's day 26 of his 30-day sprint, and Dropbox is still buggy. It's crashing sometimes, the user interface is super basic. The old Drew would have kept tinkering forever, but the new Drew asked himself the most important question. Is it good enough to prove the core idea? And the answer was yes. It was time to launch it, warts and all. I mean, let's not forget, the founders of Airbnb launched their world-changing idea, which is 3 air mattresses on their apartment floor. Now, let's look at the final, crucial step, because launching isn't the end of the story. It's actually the beginning of step 5, the feedback loop. This is where you stop guessing and you let reality be your guide. And there's no better example of this than Instagram. Did you know it didn't start as a photo app? Nope, it was a failing, overly complicated, location-based social network called Bourbon. But the founders noticed something interesting. While people weren't really using most of the app, they loved one tiny little feature, the photo filters. So they did another elimination audit. They cut everything else and focused only on that one feature people loved. And just like that, Instagram was born.
Drew did the exact same thing. On day 28, instead of pushing a buggy product out to everyone, he released a simple 3-minute demo video showing what Dropbox could do. The result was absolutely staggering. 75,000 signups overnight. For the next 2 days, he just gave access to small batches of users, watching what they did and learning from their feedback. He learned more in those 2 days than he had in the previous 3 years. And just 18 months later, Dropbox hit 1 million users.
So there you have it. That's the Apex 30 framework. It's 5 simple but incredibly powerful steps. Number 1, the elimination audit. Cut away everything but the single most important outcome. 2, create an impossible deadline. Make it public so you can't back out. 3, deep work sprints. Execute with insane focus. 4, the MVP mentality. Remember that done is way better than perfect. And finally, number 5, the feedback loop. Let the real world tell you what to do next.
So now, the real question isn't about Drew Houston or Steve Jobs, it's about you. How can you apply this? Just think about it for a second. What is the one goal you want to crush in the next 30 days? What is the single, tangible outcome that would define success for you? What are you willing to eliminate from your life to make that happen? And maybe the most important question of all, what is the very first step you can take right now to get started?